So we've had a bit of a weird week. So, yeah. But yeah, I'm really curious, Helmer. What do you consider yourself? Oh, you're home now? Awesome. Glad to have you back. We'll have to make that happen sometime this weekend. We got a couple things going on this weekend, but yeah. Not a left winger for sure. I guess I would be a right winger, but all political nuances, truisms are kind of dead after 2016. In short, I don't vote Democrat. Who do you plan on voting for in the next election? Like as it stands now, who do you want to participate in the Democratic? Mm-hmm. Let's see how this plays out. I'm really curious. I'm curious. Actually, you know what? Okay. Okay. I'm really curious. Helmer, I'd like to bring you in. What are you doing right now? You're by. I hope you're buying Mike. I'd like to bring you in my Discord. I'd like to have a little chat with you. Let's see it because I'm really curious about this. I just wanna. You're voting for Miley Cyrus. Don't do that. Don't do that either. Although she's gotten to be a much better singer. I want you to hop in the call waiting. We'll drag you in, bud. So I really wanna have a chat for you, or a chat with you. I think that this could be very enlightening. I'm not going to attack you. I promise. I will not attack you. Yeah, she is very pretty, but she's had some good takes recently. Her she got off the drugs and her head's been a little bit better. But yeah, I'd really like to have you in, bud. See if we can because I just want to find out some stuff. The line from liking Jimmy Dore, because it's kind of going to prove a point that I've always had. Yeah, her voice is actually really good. Really blew me away when she did that. I forget what the song was. But she did it at the Find Her So Corny I'd Stand. Yeah, she did this. She did this cover for the. Oh, he's in here with the names. Okay, I'm not gonna say it. Okay, let's go. Let's go ahead and do this. Let's have some fun. Hey man, how's it going? You there? Ooh, what happened there? Hello.
Hey, what's going on?
Hey, how's it going? I dragged you in. I don't know what happened. It kind of popped back.
Yeah, hold on. Give me a sec. I think I gotta turn you up,
All right.
and I gotta mess with Discord a second,
Fair enough.
and I gotta see if I can put my phone charger in so that this shit will work properly. There we go. All right. What's going on, friend?
It's going good. I'm really curious. So, what got you into Jimmy Dore? What was the big thing that got you into him as a right winger?
Well, I think you probably would agree with this. His virtual constant hatred of Democrats was really what brought me in there, because he said a lot of stuff that no one would, none of the, and again, this was kind of during the time that I was getting into alternative media and away from mainstream media. Mm-hmm. He would just say, basically the truth, or, what, at least as close to what he thought was the truth about a lot of what, establishment Democratic ideas were. I thought they were pretty reasonable, even though I disagreed with them on most shit.
Yeah. The real thing that's really interesting about Jimmy Dore is, we've kind of always had this theory about him that he's going to make a break to the right, similar to Dave Rubin. And that's what I thought was interesting. I mean, If you've ever actually watched any left wing media, you won't find much like actual left wing media. I'm not talking about CNN or MSNBC or any of that.
Right.
Actual left wing media, you know, the Young Turks, Sam Cedar, David Packman, Kyle Kalinske, you know, some of these I
I like
like, some
Kyle
of these
too.
I do not. They have no problem attacking the Democrats. Like, I have no problem attacking the Democrats. It's because the Democrats largely don't stand for um, what I actually want. They're not an actual left wing party. We don't have an actual left wing party. And I'm wondering if you recognize that from where you sit.
Yeah, I've got some thoughts on it, and I'm kind of shooting from the hip here, so you got to cut me a little slack.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But it's with the Democrats, it's interesting because I clearly see from a leftist point of view why a leftist would look at the Democrats and say, "Why would I vote for these people?" Because I mean, they a lot of times they fairly, I think, for the left criticize them for basically agreeing with the conservatives on a lot of issues, the Iraq War, for example. Um,
That's a big
but
one, yes.
from a right, I guess, a more conservative point of view, the Democrats, at least and especially now in 2019, um, have moved way farther to the left as a party. I think generally, and I think you can see that in the debates. I mean, and again, I'm sure a lot of leftists, and maybe you included, will say, "Well, look at Nancy Pelosi; she's still not really, there yet." Um, but I think for the most part, I think it's almost a fact the Democratic Party has moved at least measurably left since 2016. So from the right's point of view, whereas before the Democrats were, functionally, liberal, but they weren't a leftist party, they're actually moving in that direction. So I think a lot of conservatives don't see the Democrats and say these people are representing my interests, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, what about I don't want to. I definitely don't want to attack. You know, that's not why I brought you on. What
Oh
about
no, for sure. But to be fair, there's no point in having opinions if you can't defend them. So
mm-hmm.
I'm not a snowflake, so to speak.
Yeah. So what was the what do you think the current Republicans do that represents you right now over, say, the Democrats and the new crop, especially more so than the liberal establishment?
Well, that's a broad question, so let me unpack it slightly. And maybe I can start with saying that I wasn't a Trump supporter in 2016, if
Mm-hmm.
that helps. Um, I kind of bought into the MSNBC Bill Kristol fear mongering that he wasn't actually a conservative. He wouldn't govern conservatively. He's what he's a little too brash, and God knows what he's going to do next. Maybe he'll just push the button and end everything. I kind of bought into that, but the way he's governed has been so clearly the opposite of what those concerns were. And I know those concerns were from the right, and you don't really necessarily subscribe to those concerns, which is fair and reasonable. But those were the concerns that someone like me, who was conservative in 2016, thought.
Okay.
But since his election and since his inauguration, I mean, he's governed more conservatively than Bush ever did. I think is fair to say. He comes without the baggage that Bush did in terms of the Iraq War and that catastrophe. I think there's a large part of the conservative electorate now that has pretty much, pushed away the neocon movement in, the early 2000s and Bush's administration. So that, it's not like the conservative base today is, begging for war with Iran the same way that they might have been for Iraq in 2002.
Well,
Um,
I mean, I get all that, but I mean more specifically, what specific policies has he actually acted on that has spoken to you as a conservative? Because I get that he's conservative.
sure, sure,
All of
sure.
them have been conservative. All have been increasingly more and more conservative. Like, I get that. Like, you guys are kind of getting really close to an area you probably should. We'll get into that. We'll get into
yeah.
that.
No, I wanted
But
to provide a little
what
context for
specific
where I was coming
policy?
from, just so you kind of get like your head around where I
Mm-hmm.
stood and where I stand.
So I'm getting
In
that
terms of
you're
specific
anti-war.
policies, say
Yeah,
again.
I'm getting that you're anti-war, which I can agree with, right?
For sure, yeah.
Yeah. So, would you say, I don't know, immigration is something he's being good on?
I'll run off a list and we can break them down.
Okay.
And hold on once. Yeah, immigration for sure. Um, Although he still has some work to do on that front. Um, his the nominating of conservative justices, I'm sure you know, is always a big thing for our side, and
Mm-hmm.
he's done a better job than anybody on that. The tax cuts were huge. Um, they helped us personally, but more specifically, the economy in general. And I don't want to break this down too. I don't want to get down too into the nitty gritty, but the people that told us that his tax plans were going to destroy the economy, and we're going to see a huge recession, then told us that when he put this tax plan in, that it wasn't actually going to do anything, and now that it did, they're saying, well, it's only helping the 1%, and now that 401ks are actually going up a lot, and workers' wages are rising, and again, marginally, this is something that people have to work. This country still has to work a lot on. But now that they're rising, they're saying, "Oh, well, it's only going to happen for a year or two, and now it's coming on 2 years." So, I think his record in the economy is obviously good, and I think the people saying that it's Obama's economy, it's a joke personally. Um, Foreign policy, he's been great. If you look past the bombast and signal and noise, and actually look at the signal, I think so far he's done a pretty decent job. And with specifics to foreign policy, the when he kind of stood down on Iran after they took down that drone, and he could have attacked, and he did not.
Does he
I
really
mean,
deserve credit for that? Because according to his own story, the only reason he did it is he claims he didn't know that that it was going to kill 100 people, as if doing that would set off a war that was going to kill millions. It seems very short-sighted and
well,
a
here,
little weird that he would get credit for that, especially according to his story, which I really, a lot of us don't believe because he has a tendency of fabricating
fabricating.
things.
No, there's no doubt about it.
Yeah, you at least
Let me,
acknowledge that.
yeah, let me unpack that for you if I can.
Mm-hmm.
With the Iran thing, I think a lot of it's been misreported, and he's one of the least articulate people in politics, so he doesn't help his cause. There's no doubt about it. Um, but
Being articulate doesn't really mean anything if you're just lying a bunch.
well, no, that again, you're not. You got to let me speak. What really happened, and I think what he was trying to say, is that basically he ordered, and again, you have to watch the interview. You have to watch the interview again. He ordered them to get in position for a potential strike.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he did. And then when they came to him to make the final, issue the final order, then he said no. And whether or not, and it's certainly possible that he's lying about when he found out the number of casualties. I have no idea. But
But
he
you
did
don't.
not order the strike and then call back the strike. He told the military to get ready so that he could make the final decision when it needed to be made.
He didn't
That makes
seem to
sense.
have the same type of views when he launched the mother of all bombs in Afghanistan, and also he doesn't seem to have the same concerns about the fact that civilian deaths
Well,
has actually increased in Afghanistan and Iraq. Uh, like he's
sure.
already increased he's had more drone strikes than Obama had
Mm-hmm.
in 8 years. Like it seems very strange that all of a sudden he cares about
Let
civilian
me.
deaths when
There's
he's
no doubt about
actually
it. And
been the
I don't know.
largest.
I don't know if he was caring about
Hang on,
civilian
hang
deaths.
on.
I don't
Let me just finish this real quick. I'll let you
for sure.
speak. it seems very weird that he would suddenly have this opinion that civilian deaths is a bad thing when he's been the largest reason for the increase in civilian deaths abroad, right?
Sure. Let me break this down. Add a little context to it. One, we're still in, in the Iraq War, which I'm against, and I think we should leave. And the sooner Trump does, the better. And the longer he stays in, the more upset I'll be. Same thing with Afghanistan. But I think Iran is a different thing, a different animal. I think it's fair to say starting a new war is a bigger deal than continuing
Oh, definitely.
an
Iran
old
would be
war,
a complete
especially
and
with
utter
Iran.
disaster.
A
Because I
war with
mean,
Iran
you want
far
to you want
more.
to talk about the differences between them and Iraq. Iraq was basically a police state, headed by a dictator, and it was very fragmented. Iran has what is it, the sixth largest military in the world, and has actually had stable leadership
For sure.
for the
I
past
don't think
30
we should dwell
years.
too far on this point because we agree. We both
Yeah,
I'm against a war in Iran. If
yeah.
Trump got
My
into a war
my
with Iran,
my big hump that I can't get over is I can't give him credit for all of a sudden caring about civilian deaths when he's literally
let me.
already killing people.
All right,
He's
right.
more than any other president at this point. I'm
Give
just
me
saying.
30 seconds and I'll explain it. To be
Okay.
frank, I don't think he cares or is. I don't think the reason he called off the strike had anything to do with civilian deaths. It's
Mm-hmm.
not clear that there were civilians in harm's way when he was going to make the strike or not. It's certainly possible, but we don't know what exactly the targets were.
Okay.
Say
But
again?
I said okay. So then why do you think he called it off?
Because, like you said, and like I said, and like I think he understands, a war with Iran, regardless of what they did beforehand to start the war, would be a catastrophe.
Then why get the troops at the ready for it in the first place?
Because they shot down one of our drones.
I mean, it was flying in their airspace. We
That's
kind
fair.
of did it
That's
to
fair.
antagonize them. I mean, there's a lot of things here that don't really sound like very sound reasoning, and sounds like he was trying to antagonize them, and he realized either I don't even know how this plays out. How you make the decision to have that drone fly into their airspace? He knows they're going to shoot it down.
Well,
He does it to
again,
antagonize them. And
that's
it's if it's a tough
there's
guy routine, it's not really working, is it? Because at this point, they're just like, you know what? Screw you guys. We're off on our own. We recognize now that we can't deal with the United States. It kind of ruins our status in the world, doesn't it? We're not seen as serious actors by antagonizing them and then at the last minute going, well, we're not going to follow through with it. Doesn't it?
well. I don't. I think that's an opinion you can have. I guess. I think the problem with that is that just look at their behavior. I mean, in the last 3 weeks, how many tankers have they messed with or seized or attacked? So
I mean,
I think
as far as I know, there was the two, and there's no real proof that they were the ones that did anything to him.
again, this is, and I hope this might get more to the heart of maybe our disagreements. This is one of the problems that I have with not leftist people, but the leftist ideology in general is that earlier in this conversation you cited, of course, our drone was in their airspace and we know it because they said so. But if
Mm-hmm.
our government says, "Hey, we know that the Iranians the attacked this tanker," and and as far as our government has shown, it's far more evidence that the Iranians have ever shown that our airplane was in their airspace. Leftists are far more likely to believe the Iranians than they are our own government. And I agree with you, by the way, just to be clear, we should always be skeptical of our own government and what they tell us. No doubt about it. But this is one of the more like nitty gritty issues that bothers me about leftism.
Well, I mean, you kind of got to look at who the calmer actor is. Like who's been more trustworthy in this, Donald Trump or the Iranians. The Iranians have been far more honest throughout this whole thing than Donald Trump has. He's lied about everything that they were doing. You know, they're a lot more moderate than they ever been, and we're trying to turn them basically back into the mullahs because we're trying to be
I don't
this
know
big
if
threat
that's
in the
true.
world to them. It kind of feels like that. I don't know if
Well,
that's the plan, but it often feels like Donald Trump needs an enemy, and when he needs an enemy, before it was Venezuela, now it's Iran. You know, next it's going to be what? He's going to start antagonizing North Korea. Eventually, all these games that he seems to be playing, someone's going to snap and do something because.
well,
And
let me
then
make two
what?
quick points, and then hopefully we can get back to our more specific
Okay.
disagreements because I don't want to dwell too much on Iran.
Okay.
I don't
That's
think
fine.
that's too much anywhere. But I will say this about Iran. You know, I don't think that Trump's, like you're saying, he's antagonizing, for his own political reasons. You have to look at what he ran on. I mean, Trump ran on getting out of the Iran nuclear deal, and he's done exactly that. You know what I mean? So this is not some, out the ass strategy to build public support for a war or for him for stopping a war.
What's
I
your
think
logic for
he's
not
doing
wanting?
exactly what he said he was going to do.
Can I ask you what's the logic behind? Because I know we don't want to dwell on it on Iran too much, but like this was something that like the world over agreed was one of the best peace deals we could have ever come up with. You know, it's something that we didn't really give up much from, and you know they didn't get hurt at all. But like no one, you know what they say about a good negotiation is, if both sides are complete are both sides are not going to be completely happy, they're going to walk away with complaints. You have to give up something on either side. It was largely regarded as one of the best peace deals we've come up in modern
Well,
history.
let me
What is the logic behind saying, yeah, we should be getting out of that though?
sure. Let me unpack at least, and you can obviously decide for yourself whether you believe they're valid. But let me unpack why getting out of the Iran nuclear deal was. It was popular. It was a successful strategy to run on. Trump didn't run on it because it was a 70-30 issue the opposite way. Um, so there's so many things, but first of all, Iran being the state sponsor of terror, and we're giving them billions of dollars, giving them
What
access to
terror?
billions of dollars of their own money, plus billions of dollars of our cash.
What 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 sponsors of terror? The largest sponsors of terror in the world is Saudi Arabia, not Iran.
That's not true.
That is 110% true.
So
I
you're
don't mean
saying
to
that
laugh at you,
Saudi
but
Arabia
it's yes, Saudi
funds
Arabia.
more terrorist militias around the world than Iran? That's not the case, friend.
It is 110% true. Saudi Arabia has a
Well,
lot more
sure.
dealings in
Let
and
me
because they're actually a Wahhabist government.
true.
Like
Let me
and Iran is not Wahhabi.
This is see here.
They're Sunni.
Do you mind? Let me cut in here
We're
if you don't
not
mind.
getting attacked. There's no Sunni attacks in the world.
Let
You
me
know.
let me cut through this because the what you're saying is not true, but I don't need it to make my point. So I'll grant you that Saudi Arabia is funding more terrorists. Fine, sure. I'll grant it to
Mm-hmm.
you. I don't believe it. I don't think it's true, but I'll grant it to you because I don't need it to make my argument. Iran still funds all the people in Yemen, funds all the people in Lebanon, funds all the terrorists that were many groups in Iraq that have killed soldiers, U.S. soldiers, funds many groups in Syria that have killed U.S. soldiers and lots of other people in the area. Not ISIS, to be fair to them. Iran has now funded ISIS, but they have funded lots of other groups. Um, so the idea that we should give these people all this money didn't work. And furthermore, to be frank about the deal, it was such a catastrophe that it didn't change behavior. Iran has been doing the same thing before the deal and after the deal.
Which was rolling back their nuclear entanglements, and they've actually
Well,
increased it since we
sure. Here,
started and started
I'll explain that as well.
antagonizing them.
Let me explain it as well. The nuclear aspect, which is what's touted by supporters of the deal as the reason why it's so good, is because Iran said they're going to close down their nuclear shop, and our inspectors will be able to go in to see and verify that they're not doing it. and they'll keep their centrifuges low, I believe, under 2,000. I think
And
that's
they did.
those exact numbers.
And they did.
That's all good, right? Sounds all good. Here's the problem. One, it did not restrict ballistic missiles and ballistic missile testing.
Okay.
Two,
Why should
there
it?
are many military sites we weren't allowed to go see. And I'm not saying, and to be fair, I'm not saying that Iran, it was before we left the deal, trying to get to a nuclear weapon by upping its centrifuges in areas we couldn't see. I'm not saying that.
Mm-hmm.
But they negotiated the deal in a way where they could stop their nuclear progress, continue to test ballistic missiles, continue to fund terrorism around the world, get all this cash back that they could use.
I seriously, I can't, dude, I can't let you go with that statement that they're funding terrorism around the world. And I really wanted to jump all over you when you said Yemen and Lebanon. Because, I mean, for one thing, like, what is the terror in Lebanon or in Yemen? We're fighting a war there for Saudi Arabia, who basically want this proxy war with them to disempower them. It's not because they're funding terrorism. No. It has absolutely nothing to do with terrorism. We're just attacking Yemen and blowing up schools and everything there because Saudi Arabia wants us to. That's their war that we're fighting. That's very literally their war that we're fighting for them.
You need to go back. Look, I don't want to dwell too far on these little nitty-gritty deals, but you need to go back and read what actually started the Yemeni war. It was a civil war. It was a civil war that happened. After the civil war
started. And what do we have to do with that?
I'm not saying we. Let me finish. There was a civil war in Yemen. I can't hear you. Hold on. Say again?
I didn't say anything.
Oh, sorry. Oh, you know what it is? I have your Twitch on. Let me turn it off.
Mm-hmm.
So in Yemen there was a civil war. The Iranians picked a side that was Shia and funded them. In the process of that civil war, the Shia groups that were fighting for control of Yemen.
I'm pretty sure that Iran is Sunni.
I don't know exactly which side was the revolutionary. I don't know exactly what started the war, but there was one side that was Shia, and the Iranians have been funding it from the beginning.
I'm pretty sure that Iran is Sunni.
No, Saudi is Sunni.
The Saudi is Wahhabi.
Well, people consider Saudi Sunni. If they also consider it Wahhabi, that's another thing.
They're definitely Wahhabi. I'm just saying, and that's that, and you know that that's a far more extreme version of Islam. And
this is a nitty gritty that doesn't need to be discussed.
It kind of does. It's kind of important because it really sets apart what the sides are.
No, read your chat.
I say that. Yes, I and Left Flank does know what they're talking about. I agree.
Again,
they're
fine.
Shia.
This is fine.
But what they're
Saudi is Wahhabi. I'll grant you everything.
Why does it matter that they're funding these groups in a?
Let me explain. It's irrelevant to the point.
Yeah, you should also check my chat too.
The Shia group was what Iran was funding. That group was fighting for control over the majority of Yemen. Okay. That same group eventually started fighting in Saudi Arabia and trying to take over parts of Saudi Arabia, launching missiles towards Saudi Arabia. That's when Saudi got involved. And to be frank, also, I don't want to argue on this point, but I'm not for us helping Saudi in Yemen. I'm not for being any part of that. I'm libertarian on most foreign policy issues. Not our shithole. I don't give a fuck about it.
Mm-hmm.
But the point is that Iran has been involved in Yemen. Iran has been involved with Hezbollah in Lebanon. Iran has been involved with lots of groups in Syria. And they've been involved with lots of Shia militias in the Iraqi border that borders Iran that killed lots of American soldiers. I mean, these are facts.
Mm-hmm.
So my point is, and again, I don't want to get too far in the nitties, but the point is that the deal was great. The Iran nuclear deal was great for stopping Iran from developing nuclear weapons. in I believe it was a 10 or 12 or 15-year period. But they could do everything else. We gave them a bunch of cash to do everything else. Gave them access to a bunch of
What
cash that
cash did we give them?
a lot of
We unfreeze their
a lot of it
accounts
was
and we never
theirs. You're
lift the
right. A lot of it
sanctions.
was theirs. Again, I'm not arguing in bad faith. A lot of it was their cash that we sanctioned.
So
But the
then,
problem is when we gave it back to them, they used it for exactly the purposes that they could have been expected to use it, which was their military, their funding of other militaries, and their ballistic missile program.
there
And
was nothing
what the
in
deal
there
allows
about
them to
them.
do is to develop all other aspects a nuclear power would need to develop. And then once the deal sunsets, which it will, which they will not renegotiate under the current terms that they had then, they'll just build a nuclear weapon because nuclear weapons are no longer that difficult to build.
I think that's a pretty far reach and is assuming a lot of bad faith on Iran. The fact that they were willing to have this negotiation in the first place and accept the deal that was also going to hamper them while also giving them some things, admittedly, that they wanted and do need, without lifting
to be
sanctions.
Fair, it didn't hamper them. It just stopped. It stopped them from developing nuclear weapons, but it didn't stop them from developing ballistic missiles that are capable of delivering nuclear weapons.
That's what I meant by hamper. So it stopped them from developing nuclear weapons. While I completely understand that at that point it would be difficult for them to do that, there's really no point in them to make nuclear weapons if we don't come off as a threat. If they don't feel threatened in any sort of way, I mean, they're not determined to take over the world. They're not trying to create anything. They're very moderate now. Like, they're being taken over by more and more moderate forces, leaning more and more to the left and away from extremism. They haven't been extreme in a long, long time. And it really feels like it's this game of looking at them like they only have the worst intent possible. If they were funding that Shia group in Yemen, I don't see how that's our problem. I don't see how that requires us to go into Saudi or go in there for Saudi Arabia, start drone striking them or selling missiles to Saudi Arabia, who is a far worse actor and a far more extreme and actually extreme version of Islam. An actual theocracy versus what Iran is, which is not a theocracy. You see what I'm saying? I don't really see.
You're not gonna catch me defending Saudi Arabia. I promise you that.
Okay, then why are we continuing? Because we catch Donald Trump defending Saudi Arabia.
Right. You don't have to support all of someone's policies to support their.
No, I understand that, but this is a pretty big deal. Because, I mean, the whole idea that he's anti-war, but, I mean, like I said, we've increased drone strikes exponentially. We're killing more civilians than we ever have.
Right. Let me cut through again. This is another thing that Trump ran on, which was getting the, quote, handcuffs off of our military. And I suspect it's not very popular with you or your chat.
Oh, of course not, because it's made us look like a joke and has made us murderers worldwide. You can admit that, right? That was a terrible idea. That's not very libertarian. That's literally going around the world and exerting your force. What happened to the non-aggression principle in that?
Well, I'll explain it. People like to forget that ISIS was a thing not too long ago.
But is ISIS in Yemen?
No. Not at all. Well, actually, yes, they were in Yemen. That's true. They were in Yemen.
Hmm.
They were in Yemen. I was in Israel recently. They were in Yemen. They were in Egypt. They were in the Sinai Desert. They were in Syria. I was in Egypt I was in Israel and I was in Jordan at the height of ISIS.
So you're ex-military, I'm guessing.
No, I'm not. I'm not ex-military.
Okay.
I have family in Israel.
Okay.
So I was there, and then I went a little bit of traveling. I was going to go to Egypt too, actually, but I got sick, and I was thinking about. I like to scuba dive, and there's a very great scuba diving spot in southern Sinai, which is part of Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
But during the time that I wanted to go, that area of the Sinai was controlled territorially by ISIS. Egypt was actually in a physical ground war to take a lot of that land back. So I didn't want to become like the next Otto Warmbier where everyone like feels bad, but also is like, why the fuck did that guy, try to steal shit in North Korea? Because like you could have seen this shit coming. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to get like abducted on some bus ride, and so I never went. But my point is that ISIS was a thing, and it was caused directly by foreign policy mistakes of the previous administration. Its rise, not necessarily its founding, like Trump
And
says, but
not just the previous administration, but the one even prior to that.
well, I'm not going to get into, and I'm not totally conservative. I do see that if you have interactions that are perceived negative around the world, you will have blowback. That's obvious. So I'm not saying that America's actions don't cause blowback, but what I'm saying is tactically, ISIS's rise and its ability to grow quickly was caused by the previous administration, not the anti-American sentiment that we can argue for hours about.
I
That
mean,
I'm sure
it didn't. It grew out of because its alternative name is ISIL. Grew out of Libya, and also into Syria.
right. No. I'm trying to agree. I'm trying to give you an olive branch. I'm saying that the shit that America has done around the world, especially in the Middle East, did not has not helped our cause in stopping these groups from starting up. But the Obama administration's tactical withdrawal of massive amounts of troops from Iraq when it was known that it wasn't ready for that to happen,
Mm-hmm.
allowed ISIS to grow quickly without us being able to fight. People forget how big of a problem ISIS was, and I know I don't want to harp on this too much, but
I
ISIS
definitely
literally
remember
came
how
within
big a
10 miles of
problem
Baghdad.
ISIS was.
What's that?
I definitely remember how big a problem ISIS was.
No, I'm not saying you. I'm not saying you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not attacking you. I'm saying that now people forget that 2 years ago, 3 years ago, ISIS was literally 10 miles, 20 miles, I believe, from Baghdad, and had thousands of square miles of land.
But and Hellord brings up a good point. How does withdrawing troops make people want to become a part of ISIS? How is that on? I mean, and I'm no defender of Obama and his foreign policy either.
I said tactically. The withdrawal of our soldiers in Iraq, in the way that it was done by the Obama administration, allowed for an area where a terrorist group like ISIS could grow quickly without us properly responding, and then get out of control in a way where the forces that we had tactically on the ground couldn't handle the situation. The Iraqi military, which we were told could defend itself, was totally incapable.
This just kind of sounds like, well, I mean, if they were capable, they would have been able to fight them off without our help, right? So the withdrawal kind of doesn't matter.
That's what the Obama administration told us, was they were capable of defending themselves, and that we didn't need to be there.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I'm not saying that Obama's rhetoric or the anti-American sentiment was created by the Obama administration. What I'm saying is that the tactical situation on the ground was put in such a way where a group like that could rise unchecked, and that's what happened.
And the alternative was what?
The alternative was listen to the generals, which was, we're not ready to leave. There's lots of terrorists here who are gonna
it gets very difficult to listen to the generals when they largely are for endless wars, because that's how they pad their pockets.
That's kind of unfair. I mean,
how is that unfair?
What I'll say is this.
It really boils down to the thing. It really boils down to the long-standing idea to that everything looks like a nail to a hammer. So of course they want the continuous war. It basically justifies their continued employment. And basically the idea is, yes, we stay there forever.
If I can. I'm not saying that my problem is not with generals once they are put in the situation that they're put in, telling us what they think needs to be done. My problem is with politicians who put our generals in military situations they never had to be in the first place, like Iraq. You see what I'm saying? So
So once we're there, we
I'm
never leave.
no. That's not what I'm saying.
So,
What I'm
but I
saying
mean,
is
this is what I keep coming back to
no,
because
but
like at what point would there have been a good decision to leave? What that the generals would agree with? Do you believe that they would have actually said yes, it's okay, we leave now?
I don't think. I think again, this is another problem that I have with leftism. I don't think generals are acting in as bad faith as people think they're acting.
Why
I
not?
think why not? Because they're good people who are put in charge of.
Do you know
And
any
again,
generals?
if you join the military, the reason people fight is not for America; it's for the person next to them. And generals put
I don't know about that. I've known plenty of people in the military, and they said they went there to
I'm
get their
saying when
school
you're in
paid for.
combat, when you're in combat, you're not thinking about your love of country when you're getting up to go into a building. You're thinking about I need to do this because otherwise the guy next to me might be in trouble. Um,
This sounds like some really weird platitudes. I'm gonna say, my friend.
no, it's not a platitude.
I mean,
I'm saying you have to
I don't assume nothing but bad
you
faith
have to
from
put
the
yourself.
military,
I
but
tried to be
you
as
do have
specific.
to
You
you
have to
do.
put yourself in the shoes and in the position of a person in good faith, trying to do their job. I
But
don't think the
that's
generals are, secretly saying, well, that next Boeing contract is very important, and if we leave here, that might not happen. These people are in
um.
charge of, thousands of soldiers, and they take that role, they take that responsibility very seriously.
If they took that role very seriously, they wouldn't have let us into Iraq either.
No, it's not a general's job. Bush told our
It's their
generals where to
job
go.
to get the information
When
and to not and to not
it's
dispel bad information to get
who's
us
in
in the war.
charge, the guy who's been sent over to run operations in Fallujah, it's not he's not in charge of sending him there. He just is following orders. He was told that his job is to secure this area, and that's what he's doing.
You
You know
kind
what I
of
mean?
forget about one of the contacts that we had that led us into the Iraq War. The military knew that he was not trustworthy. We found this out later, and they chose to sit on that information because it confirmed what they needed to have happen, which was the
Right.
want
But
to go
here's my
into
problem.
Iraq. So I mean,
No,
this idea
I
that they don't
you're
care
not
about these Boeing
you're not gonna
contracts.
catch me defending the Iraq War either. My point is that we
Okay,
have to look
then
at
why are you
specific
defending the generals?
because largely generals are good people that have a very important role in society.
How do you know? You can't know that, man. You can't know that.
I can't know that people who went to school. I mean, these people went to the
I
had
know
the best
plenty of
grades
people who
in
were
their
in the
class.
military who were terrible
Um,
people.
I,
I know some who were good. I know some who
friend,
almost destroyed them.
that's not a logical argument. Which is the argument that I know bad people in this
It's
country.
not a
Therefore, you can
logical
probably
argument to
assume
say
they're
that
wrong.
they're all good
It's not
people
my point.
either. So I don't really see where you're getting at with that. That's not a very good defense. You don't know that they're good people. You assume they are, but
Yeah,
they're
well,
still
all the facts.
politicians. When they get that
Let
high
me
up
see
in
if I
the
can try
well, hang on.
to break
When
this
they
down.
get that high up in the military, they're basically politicians at that point. They don't really they're not interacting with the troops or anything. They're doing the business end. They care more about the business end than anything.
I don't think that's true, man.
Based
What
on
business
what?
end?
The military contracts. Like you honestly don't think that our
So you
Pentagon
think?
budget is so
Hold on,
large because they're good
No, but
people?
this is the problem, dude. There's so much hyperbole on this issue. Like, for example, is it possible
Hyperbole
that
like saying that all generals are good people?
I didn't say that? I said most generals are good people. That generally speaking, you can assume that.
Okay. But again,
I'm
we
not.
can't.
You're never gonna.
That's
You're never gonna
not
catch me
something
saying
logical
every
to make the
general are all
connection
good
that you're
people.
trying to make. You can't just assume they're all good, or most of them even are good.
I didn't say they're all good. I'm saying that
It
on
doesn't
average,
even
you can
matter whether
assume
you
that they're
say they're
acting in good
most of
faith.
them are good. It doesn't matter. They still make these decisions, and they make these decisions based on very specific things. They chose to hide the fact that the guy who gave us the information that led us to the Iraq War was a known liar and
Who's
has
they?
played us
All
several
generals?
times. Huh?
Who is they? All generals?
Well, the generals that were in charge of that fact-finding
Right, but this
mission.
is my point. We have to, again, this is one of the problems that I have with leftism is you get these broad generalizations about the military, broad generalizations about the police.
And it's not a broad generalization to say the generals. This is my problem with right-wingers then.
No,
that they like to hold the military up to this this standard that they are not held to. They are people. They have interests.
No,
generals have interests. You think that General Kelly went from being chief of staff to now heading the same prisons that are heading the, we'll call them, child detention centers? You think that that happened completely based on the fact that he's a good general? Or because he worked the business side and worked as a politician once he hit that level of General John Kelly? Which do you think it is? I know which one I think it is.
So you think like the prison industrial complex and the military industrial complex got together and thought General Kelly would be a good person to run the quote-unquote concentration camps on the border?
No, but I do think that he played a lot in the business side. They saw how he worked on the business side, and they thought he would be a good person to bring in. That specific company, yes. Because that's very literally what happened.
This is a distraction. It's not part of the main issue.
It's a distraction to tell me that most generals are good people. And that they don't have any interest in the business end. This is silly, man. This is really silly. You don't see how this is silly?
Assuming that hold on a second. You think that assuming that generals are good people most generals are good people acting in good faith is silly?
Yeah. Because there's no way we can know that.
No, you don't have to know it, but you can look at what their life choices are.
Yeah, and their life choices.
To get to that level, you have to get to West Point. Do you know how difficult it is? These people could have gone to any college in the country.
McCain went to West Point. He got in because his daddy gave them a bunch of money, and he crashed several planes, and he graduated. That's not a good point either. So a lot of times it's in who you know. Again, it's the business side. It's the politics side, my man.
No, but you're using this. You're using a single case to.
This has become a very glib.
On average.
This has become a very glib conversation, my man. I got to be honest with you.
You're totally distracting. You don't think the average person who applies to West Point doesn't have like some guy high up in the military who's sneaking them in the back door with bad grades? You think that they're all just idiots?
No, not all, but some do, and a lot of them have rich parents that they get in.
I have to clarify in this point. What percent of people who go to West Point do you think are just political appointees?
Let's not do I think, and let's actually look it up. So here's what I typed in. How many West Point graduates were legacy? Okay? So we're going to find out. We'll say, we'll change it. Because I don't like how many. What percentage?
Legacy is different from what you're implying about John McCain.
He was a legacy.
Well, no, yes, he was a legacy. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that you're saying John McCain
his father was a general.
In and that he didn't know anything at all.
I mean, his grades weren't good. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I'm not defending John McCain and how he got into West Point. I'm saying that you have to look at the average standards that they apply and how many people meet those standards.
Unfortunately, they don't have like the percentage of legacies.
West Point is a very difficult school to get into.
Not if you're rich. Not if your daddy is a general, apparently.
No,
like I said, John McCain got in there.
Dude, man, you're doing it again. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that you're impugning the credibility of most generals. I'm saying that we can assume that on
I
average.
don't I'm not assuming anything of the generals except for the fact that they
No, you're saying
are.
it's laughable to think that most of them are good people.
Yeah, because it's kind of needless pablum. What's the
How
point
is
of
that
even
needless?
saying that?
I'm saying
You're assuming that they're all just going there
I
on
never said
good
all.
faith.
I
Well,
said multiple times. I never said all.
most.
Those
Okay,
are your words
okay,
now.
okay. Most are going there because they just care about their country, and not the fact that, oh wait, I could actually make a lot of money doing this. I'm already in the military. I've worked my way up this far. I've
This
kissed a
is,
lot of ass, and I'm willing to kiss a lot
dude.
more ass to do it.
Yes, my point is that people with the credentials to apply to West Point and any of the military schools that send people to upper ranks, the people that apply to them, the standards they have are Ivy League or almost Ivy League levels. So the people that are applying to these things, they could do something else. They could go work on Wall Street and they could go to Harvard or Yale or some of the top schools if they wanted to. But they're
Um,
applying here
Left
for
Flank
much
makes a
less
good
money than they
point.
could do.
He looked into it. You have to be interviewed and endorsed by a senator or representative to get into West Point. So it kind of, if your dad is a general, you're kind of already buddy buddy with a senator or representative. That's true, right? That makes sense, right?
Buddy.
I mean, yeah. I mean, you grow up with them. If you're raised, if you're like in the case of John McCain, because that's the one that I specifically know about. Okay, his father was a high-ranking general for a long time.
See, this is one of the biggest problems with leftism, though, and I'm saying this
Because
for
we
your
we
benefit
we
because this is
recognize
why
the
leftism
social
is so
dynamics
hard to
of
get
these networks
integrated
of
into the
highly
U.S.
powerful
electorally.
people.
Is
That's
because
why you don't like leftism, because
no,
you
man.
wanted to get away with this idea that you want me to believe that most this claim of most generals are like it matters. They still do bad things. They still decide to make these deals that result in bad dealings. They
Dude,
still have these
you're
intentions
using
to
they again, man.
constantly. Well,
Dude,
yeah,
you're using they again. Show me the
because it
problem,
happens. Because it's been
dude.
happening for
You're
the past how many years?
you gotta relax, man. You gotta show me the specific problem, and I'll agree or disagree. But when you say these generals, man, they're doing the bad things, like there's nothing there to discuss, friend.
Assuming an average is not a they. You still there?
Sorry, what'd you say?
Assuming an average is not a they.
What do you mean, assuming an average?
Assuming that most of them, and you're saying that I'm making broad generalizations, and I keep pointing this out to you. You're made this broad generalization, which apparently is okay because it's positive for them. That
Yeah, these are
most
people that are
generals are
trying to
good.
serve our country. They're like, there's nothing to. Do you think the average person, like, who goes and applies to work in public service after college, like they could go and apply for lots of other things, but they do that. You can assume that these people are, they're thinking good about our country. They want to serve our country. That's important.
I think that most people choose to join the military because of the benefits offered to them. Most people don't want to sign up to put their life at risk, no matter what the country, ours included. I mean, I've
I'm not going to
known
argue
many
with
of
you that
these
people don't want
people.
to put their life at risk, but when people sign up for the military, they make that choice, and they make it because they make it because they support our country and they love our country.
That's that's quite a thing, and just man.
I don't know, man. Like,
This. I mean, It's just kind of funny that you're okay. You're not okay when I make broad generalizations, as you put it. Which my broad generalization is they do the job that they do, and your broad generalization boils down to this is how they feel. This is what they
No,
think. This is who they
no, man.
are.
I'm saying that if you're gonna say that there's a problem, you got to show me what the problem is and who's doing the problem, right? Like I'm not gonna like you can, on average, you can think
You
that
don't
most
think
people who
it's
join the military
you don't think
have
it's
love of
weird that
country
these
in mind, and it's
generals when
part
they
of the
get out
reason.
of
I don't think that's an absurd statement to make.
you don't think it's weird that these generals after they get out of service they wind up working in the defense industry? You don't think that's kind of strange?
Well, here again, this is see, we're getting down to specifics. I like this. Two
Okay.
things to that. One, I mean, it's perfectly reasonable to think that a general who goes and works in public service after would want to work in something similar to that. That's their wheelhouse. That's where they're going to make the most
But
money.
if
That's what
they're
they know best.
constantly vying
That's their
for these
career, right?
specific contracts with this
But
specific
two, here,
country
no, let me
company,
again.
and then
I
then
think
they move
you're
on
trying to
to
make this a
working
little
for
more
this company.
confrontational than
Hang
it
on,
needs
hang
to
on,
be,
hang on,
friend.
hang on, hang on. Because this is a key point. You want me to get into specifics? I'm going to get into specifics. You don't think it's weird that a guy goes from working in the military, he gives a number of specific contracts to a specific company that are very friendly with them, and then goes and works for them. That's not a problem. That's not corruption. That's
Well,
them being mostly
again,
good.
here, friend. I think you're making this a little more confrontational than it needs to be. I'm
It's just this. It's a silly conversation, and I
no,
can't believe
because
you as a
friend,
libertarian are
if
just
you let me
are,
get in a word in,
oh
you
boy.
just you just set up an argument against something that I never said I was for. You just made this whole case like, oh, like you I assume now in your mind think that I'm for corruption and generals taking backroom deals to get the contracts so that they can get their cut to give the army more money and more equipment. I'm not saying that. I'm
I
saying that
I can tell you
that's
what
I
I
mean that's
think.
why I
I think
assume
you're
that's why
being
you were
very
laughing,
glib about your
right?
view
I
of the
mean
military.
you assumed that I was taking an absurd position, but I'm not taking
It
that
is an
position.
absurd position.
And I'm not right, but this is exactly my point. You just laid out a huge case against
How?
something I
Okay,
never said.
okay.
That's being
Let's just
confrontational.
get to the nitty gritty because I got to bounce soon. I got to work in the morning. So,
Perfect. I agree. All right. So just
okay.
on this, we'll end on this issue. I'm not saying that that's not a problem, but you like for example with generals going and working for defense contractors after two things. One, I'm for any barriers that we can put up if they're reasonable and they make sense and they don't infringe on like crazy First Amendment thing like you cannot work for a defense contractor. I'm I'm for more legislation on that issue for sure, no doubt about it. But there's another part to this that gets left out a lot when leftists go on these tirades about the military, which is there are recusal things that go on when someone who was formerly a defense contractor employee is then working in the government. They largely are made to recuse themselves from deciding what goes on with specific contracts. So if that needs to be bolstered and more, we need to put more protections in place. If that's not working, I'm all for it, right?
Yeah, because I'm really curious about that. That sounds. I don't want to say made up, but if it's enforced at all, I would be shocked. And how it would be enforced would be really, you know, it'd
I'll tell
be.
you how it gets enforced. When you become Secretary of Defense, for example, let's say I'll give you a quick hypothetical if you don't mind.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say the previous CEO of Boeing now becomes Secretary of Defense. Let's say, right?
Mm-hmm.
If there's a Boeing contract down the pipeline, that gets pushed down under recusals to the deputies or the deputy under him, depending on what the recusal is.
And if the
So there are.
defense
I'm
sector,
just saying there are safeguards. It's not this like one
but
giant criminal cabal.
but if the defense secretary goes ahead and just negotiates the contract anyway, it just says I don't care about this law because I don't like it, which, I mean, the fact that that's likely happened is pretty good, especially under Trump. What's the reprimand for? What's stopping him from doing that? What's the recourse that's happening after that?
What's the recourse that's happening if he violates that?
Yes.
I'm not exactly sure how the system works, but I assume that there's either ethics investigations involved or criminal investigations if it rises to that level. And certainly the administration would be told that that would have been broken, and they would have to make a decision whether to fire the person or not.
If that administration chooses to go down that path and attack its own people. If it's a very protectionist type of administration like the Trump administration is, do you honestly think they're going to do that? For example, on day one, we remember that Trump made this big pledge that he was going to put a 5-year moratorium on people going from the government, from his administration, to a private industry. But I literally just told you that John Kelly, as soon as he left, went and worked for a private prison. There was no moratorium and no one enforced it.
But see, again, I don't see what's the problem with him working.
What do you mean? What is the problem?
So he goes and works there. What policy has changed? What is bad for the country that's happening?
He's an inside guy in one of the top levels of the government, basically sitting feet from the president for months, years, and then goes and works for a private company where he can use that influence to do things like, I don't know, becoming the sole contractor of all the detention facilities. I'm trying so hard not to call them concentration camps because I know that triggers you guys. But that is the thing. You think it's just weird? It's just a coincidence that that's the company making the prisons. It's a coincidence.
But again, see, this is like, you have to show me like what specific law is being broken, like what policy is being changed.
Well, the moratorium that Trump said himself and passed as an executive order, and he chose not to enforce it because John Kelly is his person and he's protecting him because that's what he does. He's a protectionist president. So this idea that they can enforce this, if they're not enforcing it, it doesn't really matter, does it? You say these protections are there, but if they're not doing anything about it,
he's a private citizen. He can work wherever he wants to work.
But that's not how Trump set that up.
No,
when he set, an executive order is similar to law at that point, right? So this idea that he wasn't supposed to go and do that, and it just so happens that those are the prisons that's the company that we're using still to build more prisons.
Do
you see the problem here?
It was pretty widely reported that Trump and John Kelly weren't exactly friends at the end of the firing.
Well, okay. Do you think I care about that? You think that that's going to change the business that goes on there? And you think that matters? Because also, do you know who else didn't like Trump? Lindsey Graham. Now he's his biggest cheerleader. These things change based on the politics and based on the business end, which Trump cares a lot more about.
I just want to respond quickly to what one of your chatters said, if you don't mind.
Oh, yeah.
Left Flank said something about me being a libertarian. I never said that.
You did.
No, I said I'm libertarian on specifically foreign wars, just to give context again.
Okay.
But more importantly, where was it? Arguing for more legislation. I never said I was libertarian, and I'm
okay. He admits it. That's fine.
I'm not a. Hold on one second. Hold on. No, something. Discord. No. Don't know. when it comes to legislation, like if 2016 showed anything, it's that like the normal political truisms about being the right being for getting out of government and this and that, like all that stuff is irrelevant now. So just
Yeah,
because
how is
I'm
it
a Trump
irrelevant? I
supporter,
mean, you literally said yourself that he's running it. He's running the administration as a conservative and more conservative than before. If they're all just running things as conservatives, I think those distinctions still matter. He is a Republican. He is conservative. These distinctions do matter.
true,
In
true,
fact, they
true
matter a lot more
on
now.
individual
Now
issues
that we're
that
actually moving the Democratic Party to be an actually left-wing party and actually be some sort of opposition party and actually effective. Not now,
well, we'll
obviously.
see if they're effective, but they certainly are moving to the left. That's certain.
Yeah. Well, it'll be effective. Don't worry about that. But I have to.
I'm
I
curious, real quick.
actually
I know
have to.
this has gone on way too long, but who do you think? Who do you like in the 2020 Dem nomination?
Oh, Bernie, baby.
Bernie, you think he
Yeah.
can do it? You think
Yeah.
that the Dems
Oh,
won't shaft him
yeah.
again?
I think they'll try. They've already tried. It's
They
not going
are
to work
trying.
this
There's
time.
no doubt about that.
Because for one thing, Bernie started his campaign early enough to actually run a successful campaign. Second of all, he's already made a lot of headway in in the party. That can be shown by a lot of people basically putting on Bernie masks, as I like to say, and basically pretending to be for these policies that they're literally not. Um,
Right.
and basically he's got more people on his side. He's had enough time to get his message out there and show that he's not this crazy loony socialist. He's just a democratic socialist, which is not the same thing.
Also,
He's slightly to the left of center according to an actual political spectrum and not the
right.
Americans crazy right-wing Overton window. I think he could do it because we're going to make him get there.
I'll give you the right wingers, I guess you would call me, uh, opinion on the Bernie thing.
Mm.
I think in terms of his campaign strength, his biggest weakness is that a lot of these Democrats around him are trying to take his thunder by co-opting his policies and saying that they're for them, and we'll see if that's effective. If Bernie supporters in 2016 believe that and switch their vote,
We
so
don't.
we'll see that. But I think his biggest strength is that he has little, I don't want to say Trump in him, but he has like the Trump style. You can't believe the polls, like. Uh,
He doesn't say you can't believe the polls.
no, he doesn't say that. I'm saying is like, for example, when I look at a poll that says Bernie has 11, like 12 points or something, like I don't believe that. You know what I mean? Like I think that he has a lot more support than people think he does, and that the polls show.
Yeah, the polls largely show support within the Democratic Party, registered Democrats. So someone like me, who's registered independent and has been, from the
Right.
beginning, I'm not counted in that. But I'm for Bernie, and I've said this to my dad, who's recently come out as a Biden supporter, and I told him he's gonna very much regret that.
There are Biden
Um,
support. I didn't know there were Biden.
he started out as Pete Buttigieg, or as he called him, the gay guy. But I don't.
Edge.
Yeah, I don't really worry about that. I told him he was going to regret that, and he did. He'll come around. I told him to at least give Warren a shot if he's gonna say Biden, because I told him, once the stink falls off of him from him being only Obama's vice president, which a lot
Right.
of liberals really look as a good thing, he's gonna get exposed, and it's already happening. But so I too believe that he has a lot more. Yeah, he's got a lot more, honestly, independent and Republican support.
I'll also give you the conservative opinion, or the right wingers opinion, certainly
Mm.
Trump's words opinion on Biden. We're praying for him. We love Biden. We There's just
I
no
know you guys
universe
do. He
in which
should.
Biden
He
can
honestly
defeat
should
Trump
have.
in an election.
I've said from the beginning before he announced that he should have run as a Republican. He should have primaried Trump. He's a great
We love
Republican.
Biden, and that we don't think he could beat Trump. We don't. We would. None of us would vote for Biden. Just to be clear.
Well, yeah, because you guys are very tribal. I get that. but he should
But
have at least tried. I
the
believe it would have
the only
made
sad
things
part
way
for
more
us is that
interesting than
the
having
only sad
20
part for
people
us is
on
that
stage.
we love Biden, and a lot of Trump supporters that I know were sure that Biden would sail right through the Dem nomination. But I've never thought Biden had a chance in this nomination, and his best day was the moment he entered the race. And I don't see a universe in which Biden can win the Dem nomination. It's not possible anymore. And B, I don't see a universe in which Biden could beat Trump.
Oh, of course Biden wouldn't beat Trump. I
Can you
totally agree with
imagine
you.
Biden and Trump on a debate stage?
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
would basically Biden is basically very similar to Trump, but he pretends like he's not. And
Trump would
I've
just
always said
dismantle him.
when you have somebody pretending like they're not a thing versus the real thing, they're going to vote for the real thing. That's why I'm against the so-called moderate Democrats running in right-wing areas. I think you either go left wing, actually left wing populist, or don't friggin' run. Because that's the only way. That's the only chance you're going to win. At least be honest with your politics, rather than pretending to be Republican light. Because if the choice is Republican light versus Republican, they will choose Republican every single time.
True.
I totally agree with that.
True.
Yeah.
No, there's no Trump supporter that's ever going to vote for Biden. I promise you that.
Oh yeah, you guys have a very tribal problem, but we'll see how that plays out. But I do have to get going. It was good talking to you. We'll have to
For
have
sure.
you come by again
Next
because
time, if we have a discussion, I think we should stay on the generals and stay away from the nitty gritty. I don't think it gets us anywhere.
the nitty gritty is really important. Oh, I will say that I can't let that go. If I hear something that absurd, I'm gonna pounce over it. And I know you say it's not. I'm sorry.
It's all good, bro.
All
That's
right.
the point of speaking.
Yep. All right. I hope you come back by. I usually do this every Wednesday, so see you next week.
All good, man. Good luck. I always give my good lucks to Bernie. I hate to see Bernie not do well because he got shafted last time.
I appreciate that. He's gonna do a lot better, I guarantee. Have a good one, man.
Peace, homie.
All right. Well, that got interesting. That's the first time I've had that happen on here. That was fun though. And yeah, largely that wow. I wanted to get into more about his love for Jimmy Dore, but that went off a rail. That went crazy. I really wanted to push him on immigration too, and next time I really want to ask him about the economics, because I have some. I mean, we all saw the information that Elizabeth Warren pushed out this week, and when you're confronted with somebody who predicted the 2008 crash, you tend to believe them. She was one of them.